welcome to the review of Juni Taisen Zodiac War Chapter 1. I really enjoyed the 2 chapters of the manga that I got to read in Weekly Shonen Jump Breakdown, and so now I want to cover the series itself as the manga goes forward, and probably get in some anime reviews for it too, just because I do think it has a really interesting concept, although we'll see, I suppose, if the execution will carry forward. So, we start this chapter with the story not being told by Boar, which is a little interesting. The story is being told by this mysterious figure that we later find out is a guy named Navi. I don't know if this is supposed to be a pun on navigation, or if there's some other reference here, but as we'll see later, Duodecuple has a reference built inside his name, and I assume that there's probably one with Navi as well. With the story being told by Navi, we get to see that it's a little bit more mysterious, having it come from him as coming from Boar herself, but we get pretty much the same amount of information, though I do think we get to see a better version of her mother. It was pretty easy to tell just from the novelized version that her father was very abusive. Even if he meant well and was trying to shape her up to be someone who could survive, he was doing it in a harsh way. But the line of her mother was so doting that it could be considered crazy, or doting to such an extreme, depending on the translation. The Shonen Jump version used the extreme. That doesn't really give us a good example of what her mother was like, whereas here, almost immediately, the manga gives us a good example of just, and this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. It's like, yeah, I prefer that. I think this gives a better idea of how messed up Boar's childhood was, although there's no reference to her sister here, whereas we got that in the novel, which also did a good job, I think, of painting that her childhood was probably not a very easy one at all. We get a more detailed explanation of the fighters, since that was probably going to be meted out over the course of time in the novel, but you can't really mete that kind of thing out where you're seeing all the characters. In the novel, you can just get told that they're there and you don't have to get descriptions, but in the manga, obviously you're seeing those characters right away. So having a better breakdown is not a bad idea at all. And I like that this includes panels of what could either be the past or the future. And not knowing which excites me a whole lot. Because I want these to be from the future. These to be snippets that we see of these characters later on that we don't get to see yet. It gives the characters a whole different dynamic than what they had in the book, where they were just all these mysterious figures. But I also don't know how you would do that in the book without it just seeming like Boar was completely, totally insane. So we get to see Ushii the Ox. He's the matador-like swordsman. We get that confirmed. We get Tora the Tiger. We get a better look at her, although the single-shot panel that we got from the end of Shonen Jump gave us a pretty good idea. It was the cover of the manga, actually. Gave us a pretty good idea of what a lot of these characters look like. Now we get a better look at all of them. Tora the Tiger with her drunken power. Niwatori the Chicken, who pecks people to death. I'm assuming that's a reference to the trident-like fork that she had in her hand. In hindsight, I suppose pitchfork was probably a better term to use than trident, but hey, that's fine. We get to see Sharyu the Monkey, and we get a better feel for her design in this than I felt like we did in the novel, whereas Boar is talking bad about her the whole time, and you can't really trust Boar's depiction of her. In the manga, you get to just see her as she is, and she's an interesting-looking character. I feel like there's a lot more going on behind her than we know. Speaking of a lot more going on, Hitsuji the Sheep, who seems to have a special power? The next panel talks about how he can use quantum tunnels. And again, that's probably a flash forward there. But still, either that's a lie, or there's some crazy stuff going to be happening here. I'm very excited to find out about Hitsuji's quantum tunnels. And who else might have weird powers? Because next up is Dokku the Dog, who looks very feral. He's got a really cool design. I really like it. Then there's the Tatsumi brothers, of whom we know, of course, one is already dead. Hey, that's, again, I talked about it in my review of the novelized version. If you have to kill off one of the characters right away to prove that one of the other characters is a little unhinged, killing off one of the twins is the safest bet. Because then you still have the other one to carry on his brother's work. And it also does the benefit of showing that Tatsumi, the one that's still left, didn't really care that much about his brother in the first place. Or maybe his brother's not dead. Maybe this is all a trick. If they have weird powers, who knows? I guess we'll wait and see. But I very much enjoyed getting to see the Tatsumi brothers here. Alright, sorry for that quick jump cut, but I just noticed the sun had gone down and it was dark in this room again. Okay. Back to it. Next up we have Uuma the Horse, who is the big guy. Sure, okay, he seems pretty interesting enough, I guess. Then there's Nezumi the Rat, who is the sleeping one, and it's nice to have a confirmation on which one was sleeping, because the novel didn't give that either. And of course, Inonoshishi the Boar, with her twin machine guns. Finally, we get Usagi the Rabbit, who is the twin-bladed swordsman from the first chapter in the novel. I actually thought at first that the swordsman was going to be Ushii. I'm glad it wasn't, because Ushii looks like he's going to be a really interesting character, and I really like Usagi the Rabbit. His whole thing of just, he's nuts, but he's not crazy as in he doesn't know what's going on. He's very sane. He's just nuts, and I love it. I love his design. The fact that he's basically naked except for the straps leading to his little crotch guard with the gloves and the collar with a little tie there. It's a really interesting design. And then, of course, the fact that he just flips the sword back and forth like it's nothing. It's like, okay, yeah, all right. That could be pretty interesting. The only problem that I see with Usagi is that I assume he's probably going to die really quickly, as we'll get into later in this review. We'll see. Characters like him don't normally last that long, to be honest. They get to a little bit of time to run wild, maybe kill somebody he already has, and then they're put down pretty quickly, so you can get on to the more character-centric fights, I guess you could say. It's possible that he escapes the first big fight that he has, or wins the first big fight that he has, I guess. But I expect him to be one of the first ones to die, after the other Tatsumi brother, who's already dead. We also get to see Duodecuple is not the young man that we saw earlier, because that obviously was Navi, but we didn't know that just reading. He is a little bit of an older man, and Duodecuple is very interesting in the manga version. In the novelized version, he kind of pops up, and he talks to him a little bit. In the manga version, it seems almost like he's got more flair, I guess, where he's just, using his arms in broad sweeping motions, and he's almost bowing towards the table with the gems on them, I guess, almost crystals. I guess either one works. Duodecuple, of course, means 12-fold. This is something that I don't know why I didn't bring up in my review of the Weekly Shonen Jump. But it can also mean of the 12, or of 12, which I think is a very apt name for him, since he is running this whole show, this whole tournament-style thing, this battle. It's interesting to me to see all the different people that don't have a problem whatsoever with swallowing these gems. And although, yes, there was a scene where it kind of lingered on Boar swallowing hers, why this interests me is because there were quite a few characters who didn't seem to have any problem with it at all. And weapons hidden inside someone's throat are very common in this style of super violent, and I'm saying this style, we don't know for sure it's this style yet, but in super violent action series, somebody having a weapon hidden in the throat is not really a big surprise. Basilisk is the first one that comes to my mind, and it could be an interesting giveaway that some of these characters, especially Hitsuji, who seems to have no problem whatsoever, could have a bomb inside his throat or something. I think that'd be really cool to have a callback to that he had no problem swallowing this gem, just because of that. But the moment in this manga, the moment of the chapter for me, is when Duodecuple, in the book, in the novel, he tells them the best way to get the jewel is going to be to cut open your enemy's belly. In the manga, he shows that. He legitimately cuts open his own belly, and a jewel pops out on the ground, and then he's just gone. He's like, hey, I wish you all the best. Boop. The blood's on the ground. It's like, man, Duodecuple has a lot more going on. Just him vanishing beforehand was already cool enough in the novel, but the manga paints him now as someone so much more powerful than I originally expected that it makes me very excited. And I can't wait to see what goes on there. If somebody breaks the rules, he's going to step in, or what happens there. Very, very interesting. I also liked that we get to see the difference in the way Usagi looks when he's looking at Duodecuple and when he's looking at Navi, where he's just like a very basic look, and then the killer look that he gets. Because like Boar says, he's gauging if he can take that enemy down or not. which is how someone like Usagi looks. He looks terrifying, by the way, when he raises his blade to support Monkey's plan. It was really interesting to me to see the look on the characters' faces when they gave their assent to help with Monkey's plan. I didn't expect it, I guess, the looks that they gave. But I'm not against it. It was pretty interesting because it almost seemed like a dumbfounded stare that Uuma had. And I want to know if that's his standard look or if he was just like, okay, maybe this would work. I don't know. Whereas Ushii seemed kind of, leaning towards it was a good idea, and Niwatori just seemed bemused the entire time. So we'll see how that goes. Of course, when Usagi gives his support, they all back out. And it's just Nezumi that's left. When the explosion breaks out, we get this really cool shot of Boar spinning as she falls. And it's accented by her hair and the rose she has on her chest. And it's just a really cool shot as you see the spin continue and the hair kind of takes over where the rose stops because you don't get to see the rose anymore. And speaking of not really getting to see the rose, this is a really nice touch that this chapter has, and I hope it continues on through the rest of the series, which is that when Boar is angry and she's thinking about Monkey and she's not being refined, and the look on her face is very much more reminiscent of how her father taught her to look, you can't see the rose. I went back and double-checked those panels, and during those scenes where she's angry, or she's looking vicious, or anything like that, you cannot see the rose. And that's really interesting to me because most of the time we look at roses and we go, okay, that represents love. Obviously, all flowers have a different meaning, and different roses have a different meaning. But another thing that red roses stand for is elegance, which is something that she's, trying to project an air of elegance, an air of refinement. And in the scenes where she isn't being refined, where she isn't being elegant, you don't see the rose. And I found that very interesting. I want that to continue the entire story because I think that would be really cool. Because when she does become more refined again, when she does calm down when Usagi challenges her, and it's like, hey, you called me out. I can't have people calling me out like that. You didn't even have any proof, and you still did it. So now we have to fight. When they, stare down each other, the next shot you see is her with that refined, elegant lady expression on her face again, and you can clearly see the rose. And I really like that. I want that to continue, and I hope the anime does that as well, because I can easily see that being something that is forgotten by the anime. And, we'll see if it's even continued by the author or not in the manga. But it's one of those things that you can't really do in a novel that you absolutely can do in a manga or an anime that I hope continues. And then finally, yelling out their killing styles at the end is a little odd. But at the same time, I have a feeling it's going to grow on me. And probably hearing it in the anime will help. I just really want to hear Ushii say, just kill! I don't know why. Just something about the idea of everybody else being like, kill an avariciousness! And then Ushii just being like, just kill! I think it's dumb, I think it's stupid, and I love it. And that basically is my opinion so far of Zodiac War. In that I think a lot of the decisions it makes are done for flair. I think a lot of the decisions it makes are done for attention grab, and to try and get you to really notice it. I mean, one of the biggest things that stood out to me is that none of the women in this series are wearing pants at all. Boar's got a dress, but nobody's wearing pants, and that's not a problem, but it feels like a lot of the decisions they made are, hey, look at us. Look at what we're doing. We're doing something cool. And at the same time, they are doing something cool. I like most of these characters. I think they have really cool designs. I don't know a lot about them yet. But when I look at Ushii, I'm like, hey, I want to know more about Ushii. When I look at Tora, I'm like, okay, yeah, I want to see Tora fight. What does she got? I want to know how Niwatori pecks her enemies to death. What does that mean? I want to see it. And then absolutely, I just want to see Hitsuji's quantum tunnels. There's so much promise that this manga has in its first chapter. It adapts the first and second chapter of the novel and then still has extra on in a really interesting way, and it makes me want to see what else is going to happen. So, absolutely, this week's chapter I would give a 4 out of 5, mainly just because I would have liked to have seen a couple more things in this chapter. I would have liked to have seen maybe... It's tough to just say what I was hoping for, but I was kind of hoping we get to see Usagi kill the other Tatsumi brother, and I know that wouldn't have really carried the same weight, but Boar doesn't seem that shocked in the manga when she walks in, whereas in the novel, for a second, she's kind of taken aback. And it felt like, okay, well, maybe we could have seen Usagi do that, because we don't actually get any real violence this chapter, other than Duodecuple cutting open his own belly. And I'm not saying every chapter needs to have it, but it was something that I was looking for. So, 4 out of 5. Really good chapter. Makes me want to read the rest. Makes me want to read more of the novel, honestly, because I want to see how it, and I may read them subsequently as we go and try to see how it adapts. And then, of course, now I have to watch the anime, because I need to see that scene of Duodecuple cutting himself open, and just to see nobody react. That's probably my favorite point about that whole scene, is that nobody's reacting to it. Nobody's going, oh no, what's happening here? Everybody's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's happening. And I want to hear the voice acting. I absolutely want to hear the voice acting when they yell out their killing styles. So, yeah, this is a really good chapter. Definitely check it out if you're on the fence about reading Juni Taisen. I think the manga is well worth it just from the first chapter. Obviously, we'll see how it goes. It could fall apart later on. Some of the greatest have. But we won't know till we get there, so we might as well keep riding. Remember to always enjoy the full spectrum that Zodiac War has to offer.